Hello again, guys. It is I, Freeze700. We are back with some Warhammer 40K lore. This time, Magnus, his youth, his early days. Let's talk about baby Magnus, the little fucking Cyclops. So, when it comes to Magnus, we're going to have to talk about a lot of things. So this video is going to be extremely long. If you do not like extremely long videos, I'm sorry, but this is just the best I can do because we have to cover many fucking topics. So, Magnus. Magnus is the first Primarch that we've ever seen, and the only Primarch, who actually knew the Emperor before he actually met the Emperor. Now, I know that phrase sounds a little fucky, like, how do you know someone before you meet him? Well, with Magnus, when he was in his gestation capsule, he was already psychically gifted. Now, all the other Primarchs, they have psychic capabilities. They just don't use it. They keep it in the background. They don't like to use their psychic powers. They have it, they just prefer not to use it. Some of them use it in other ways, like it makes them look more godly. So that way their followers worship them. Because the moment you look at them, they look stunningly beautiful and powerful. That's just their psychic presence affecting you. That's not their control, that's subconscious. They can't control that. But they could, if they really wanted to, be a sorcerer like Magnus. But I don't think they would be as strong as Magnus. So here's why. Magnus was just a little fetus inside a tube, and already he was aware of himself. He was already stretching his mind kind of outside his body and seeing what was going on around him. He knew the Emperor. He saw the Emperor. Him and the Emperor kind of spoke. Now, I don't think they spoke this early, but they definitely did know each other. It's almost like when a baby is in a womb and you keep talking to it, even though it's not conscious yet, it knows your voice the moment it's born. It knows, this is my dad. It knows, despite the fact that it has zero language understanding, it does understand English, it's not developed enough yet to understand things like this. It knows the connection because through birth, it understood. It's been talking to you for a long time. You make no sense to the baby, but the baby knows, this is my protector. This is what Magnus was kind of dealing with. Now, the other Primarchs do not know this. The other Primarchs, they had to actually see the Emperor. Conrad Kurz is kind of a different one because he had visions, so he already kind of knew what the Emperor looked like before the Emperor came. He knew the Emperor was coming. But Magnus actually talked to the Emperor. He actually seen the Emperor. He's heard the Emperor's voice. So he's kind of got an idea of who he is. Now, besides that, when the Chaos Gods sent Magnus flying through the fucking rifts of space, he made him land on Prospero. Now, Prospero is a very unique world. Prospero is a very rocky, very mountainous area, but it's also a planet full of psychers. Now, what is the history of this planet? This is why it's going to be a bit of a long video. Hint, hint. So, Prospero is actually a refuge. It's a refuge for the mutants and the psychers. Because during the Dark Age of technology, psychers were just new. They were just now starting to pop up in the human population. And if you're slightly different, everyone's going to persecute your ass. They are going to make damn sure that your life is miserable. If not, they're going to burn you at the stake outright. So the psychers kind of gathered together on little ships, just like little pilgrims, and they ventured across the Great Sea, which would be the galaxy, and found this hugely remote planet. Like, you really have to search for this planet to find it. It is way out of the way of Terra. So they colonized it. They figured, hey, this planet's great. And they were living there. They were happy. They were building their settlements. Everybody is a psycher. This detail is very important because there seems to be a predator on this planet. And this predator just so happens to only reproduce through eating psychers. That's a weird one, right? Now, I'm not going to pronounce this right, but I'm going to spell it out for you so that way when I say it, you don't think I'm a total dumbass. It's spelled Psychneeuin. I pronounce it as Psychneeuin. So the Psychneeuin species, which exists on this planet, reminds me a lot of a tarantula hawk. A tarantula wasp, whatever the fuck it's called. And it's essentially a wasp that reproduces by attacking tarantulas and impregnating them. That's the way it reproduces. The only issue is that it is vulnerable to what it preys upon. So it may be able to have a life cycle that revolves around implanting itself into tarantulas, but those tarantulas can kill it. This is what the Psyche-Neuen were on Prospero. And this was a very specific strain of Psyche-Neuen that lived on Prospero as well. Besides that, they looked essentially just like insects. They were ugly as fuck to the human eye. I have a little picture here for you guys to look at to kind of get an idea of what these ugly abominations look like. And the way they reproduced was they would only attack psychers. Now, if you were not a psyker, you were safe. The creature didn't give a fuck about you. So you could live on this world totally fine. That's the problem. Everybody who lives here is a psyker. Every single one of them has a psyker gene. So every one of these people is a prey to this predator. And this is what the predator would do. It would find a psyker. It would swoop in. The males would just kill you. But the females would latch onto your head, rip open your fucking skull, and just start planting their eggs in the millions into your fucking head. Because for some reason, psyker brains are really good at growing shit. Now, they would form these giant clouds of locusts. But really, it was the Psyche-Neuen who were just flying in droves to infect the next city. And the people of this planet, they weren't really able to make masterful sorceress spells to kind of protect themselves at this time, because Psychers is new. They knew that they were able to kind of read minds a little bit, kind of able to see a little bit in the future. They knew they were able to kind of make things happen, like make a metal wrench kind of jump off of a table through their mind. But they didn't know how to actually use their psychic powers, like form a fireball in their fucking hand and throw it at a creature. They didn't know how to do that because it's still new. So they were getting massacred by these creatures. Guns don't work on them, and these people are just immigrants. They don't know how to really defend themselves properly. Thankfully, one of them figured out a way to defend themselves. Guns don't work. Tanks don't work. Hiding inside a bunker doesn't work because these creatures can literally just pop right through the walls. Well, how about we use what we were born with? How about we use psychic powers? Someone give this man a fucking Nobel Prize. Like, holy shit, someone actually thought about it. Using your psychic powers to fight the psychic demons. That's a genius idea. So these people were in the city of Tizca. And Tizca wasn't really much of a city by this point. It was kind of just a commune of psychers and sorcerers. Each of them were in their own little cults. They were all part of their own like traditions and families. Very traditionalist people. But they developed a psychic barrier known as a kind shield. And this kind shield would actually help them ward off the entities from breaching in. This is very important. So essentially they made a very sloppy shield that's psychically powered that is able to actually stop the freaks from coming in. This is huge. Now they can actually focus on building their city. So they built it under the mountains. They cultivated even outside the mountains. They started to get out of there. But they made massive generators underneath the mountains. They were able to make hydroponic generators. It's really cool. They're starting to get shit done. Now, all of a sudden, here comes something really bad. Magnus the Red swoops in on his fucking high horse, crashes into the planet, crashes specifically into Tizca, right in the city square, and the sorcerers, they didn't really think too much of it. They just welcomed the new human, especially how psychically gifted he is. They're able to see it. They might think Fraser 700, why is this bad? Primarchs tend to do a good thing for their planet. Well, it's bad because Magnus is extremely powerful as far as psychic prowess goes. He's on par with the Emperor. He's on par with Malkador the Sigilant. He is a beacon of fucking Psyche-Neuen feeding grounds. But either way, the Psyche-Neuen weren't able to really breach the shield. But here's where it gets interesting. So, Magnus the Red, in less than a year, he was taken in, and in less than a year, he was able to learn and outlearn all the sorcerers in Prospero. And the people in Prospero, they're very open with knowledge. In fact, you may be of a different cult than me, But if you don't know enough sorcery, I'll gladly walk over and teach you. Yeah, we may have bitter rivalry and stuff, but I'll gladly walk over and teach you because I love knowledge. I love teaching it to everybody. This is what Prospero was like. This is a great area to be in for Magnus. Magnus spent tons of times in their libraries and learned everything that it could possibly learn about the psychic powers. The issue is that these people don't really understand psychic powers that much. So Magnus still craves knowledge. He's still like, what? There's got to be more to the psychic powers than what you guys know. So he quickly outstrips them. He shows that he's better at casting the spells than they are. And the way that they do spells is a little too linear, too orderly for Magnus. Magnus likes to kind of just delve into the great ocean, which is what they call the warp. Now, Magnus is actually lucky, because right now he's about, year or two old, maybe 3 years old, so he's almost a full-grown man. Well, all of a sudden, due to the lack of discipline that the Prosperan people had, the Kind Shield was failing on Tizca. This is a big, big issue. Now, the Psych Nuin are extremely blood crazy right now because they can sense Magnus. They can sense all the people in Tizca. So the moment this shield broke, they swarmed. Now, here's where it gets interesting. The thousands and thousands and thousands of bugs killed a lot of people. They killed easily 50 men in less than a second. And they killed many of Magnus's friends and family right around him. This is where Magnus was kind of hoping for. He was kind of hoping to test his limits of his psychic powers that would either push him or he would die. This is what all Primarchs do. They're very dramatic, I know. Well, something started to stir in Magnus. He started to feel a surge of strength take over him and his friends. The greatest sorcerers that Tizca had, which would be Aemon and a few other handful of nice robe-wearing delinquents, all of a sudden they felt this huge surge of energy take over them. And all of a sudden Magnus was able to flame just huge streaks of fire out of his hands. Huge flames just spraying down thousands of these insects and killing them instantly. Some of the psychers that were around Magnus were able to do similar things, these master sorcerers. They were able to do maybe a fireball here, or maybe make it where a Psych Nuin would stop in its tracks and boil on the inside of its exoskeleton and just drop dead. This is new. The people of Prospero never experienced this kind of psychic power before. This is totally different from what they are used to. Here they are just throwing their emotions into it, throwing their very heart and soul into the warp, and just casting these spells, wiping out the foes. This is new. Now they no longer need to put a barrier shield on their planet anymore. And this is where Magnus pretty much declares a crusade against these predator creatures. And he wins. Slowly but surely, Magnus actually beats back all the creatures on Prospero. Now all the Psych Nuin are extinct, and Magnus pretty much is declared king of the planet. This is great news for Magnus. He instills a lot of sorceress training. He delves deeper into the warp than anyone's ever done before. He actually outstrips everybody and puts his soul into the great ocean and explores the great ocean. This is something that none of them have ever done before. Again, they're still kind of new to the whole idea of psyker energy. They make many cults over it. They know a lot about it, but not that much. It's kind of like guns. If you went to the 18th century time and you went to a professor about guns, he'd have a lot of books about how to make a rifle, how rifles work, but they didn't really know that much. This is kind of like what Prospero was. Now, by this point in time, the Primarch has never really been wrong, so he's always been proven right. This has given him kind of an air of confidence. And, well, while he was traveling in the warp, he met the Emperor. And the Emperor warned him, while their two souls were talking, that being in the warp travel this long has its dangers. Aemon, his own very own father/mentor, warned Magnus that putting his soul into the warp like that does have its dangers. There's void predators in there. But Magnus never really encounters these creatures. So he always feels like he knows better than everyone else. He feels like everyone's just trying to hold him down. Because as I said before, the way the Prosperan magic worked before was very traditional. very rooted in very linear ways of making the spells work. And looked at what happened to those assholes. They would have been driven to extinction if it wasn't for Magnus just throwing in his knowledge and his feelings into the mix and being able to cast fire out of nowhere. So, of course, the Primarch by this time kind of feels like he knows more than everybody else. And truth be told, he kind of does. Now, something's very interesting just happened here. So after they beat the bugs and everything, Amon all of a sudden gets knowledge. A lot of knowledge. All of a sudden he glimpses into the future and he can see how to control the minds of the Psychnuan. He now learns that not only can we just drive them to extermination, which is what Magnus has done, but you can also cover their minds. You can shield yourself from their brains. So in other words, you go into their head and you give them a blind spot. You make it where they can see just fine, but you are invisible to them. This is a power that he teaches to a lot of them. This is also known as precognition. So essentially what they do is they just keep going into people's heads and making it where they are invisible, but the people don't know it. They don't know that there's a blind spot unless they were a psyker and they'd be able to detect this. The Psychnuan, on the other hand, this is why they were so easily vanquished despite being in the droves of Psychnuan, is because Magnus was able to use what Amon had learned and essentially just beat back all the Psychnuan. This, of course, is great news. Now that all the Psychnuan are gone, they begin to rebuild Prospero, making giant great pyramids made of marble and glass, and building giant libraries. Now, Tizca becomes essentially this huge beacon for the Emperor, because when Magnus put his soul into the warp, he just lit a giant-ass lighthouse. He showed a giant beacon for the Emperor to send his expeditionary fleets in. And when the Emperor finally came to Prospero, something very interesting happened. Is that the two of them just basically met each other and just continued conversation as if they know each other for a long time. Everyone else is kind of confused by this. But as I've said before, these two already talk to each other. They talk to each other all the time in the warp. Now, Prospero became a huge, important city for a lot of events that leads up in the Horus Heresy, and it becomes a planet later on that we know as a planet of sorcerers. But here's something I wanted to talk about, is that the planet itself had a very unique culture. People were very open about their psychic gifts. As I said, everybody who was there was a psyker. Later during the books of the Horus Heresy, but before the Horus Heresy event actually started, if you know what I mean. So, essentially what happens is when a few people visit the planet of Prospero, a few Space Marines, they're taken aback by what they see in Prospero. It is so open to psychers, you cannot believe. Like, if you go to a restaurant in Prospero, the waitress doesn't come to you and ask you what you want to order. She just goes into your head, figures out what you want to eat, tells the chef makes it, she comes to you with your plate. You still haven't said a fucking word to her. And she just goes, yeah, I read your mind. I knew what you wanted to eat. I didn't need to come up and ask you. It's like, whoa, you're that open about having psychic abilities? Anywhere else in the Imperium, if you did that, you would have been fucking killed right on the spot. Yet, here they are in Prospero. They're very open about their psychic gifts. Very open about it. This, of course, doesn't sit well with the Space Wolves and the Death Guard. They don't like this. But there's also a few other things about Prospero that I think was very interesting. Like, they had these wisp creatures. And by wisp, I mean like these illusions. They looked like illusions, at least. And they could take the form of anything. They could take on no form at all. They could just look like a ball of energy. They could look like a rabbit. And they would pretty much behave in a way akin to their owner. So this is where it gets interesting. These were called tutelaries. And tutelaries are essentially the owner summons up a tutelary, and the tutelary can be one of two things. It could either be a demon, or it could be like some sort of wisp creature that reflects the owner. Now you may think, well, Frieza 700, that's very different from each other. Those two things are totally different. And you're right. Those are totally different things. But here's the thing. There's two theories right now. I'm not going to tell you which theory I think is correct, but there are two theories right now as far as the canon goes as about tutelaries. Either they're not demons or they are demons. So tutelaries, to put it mildly in one theory, tutelaries are essentially just fairies. They're just reflections of the owner's soul. This means that they are not aligned to any chaos deities. They are warp creatures, though, but they are not aligned to any warp entities. So that means that they're not a demon by classification. So what a tutelary would be in that circumstances, we'll take Harthur Matt as an example. Harthur Matt is a Thousand Sun soldier and Thousand Sun Space Marine. My bad. And Harthur Matt was all about aesthetics, all about martial prowess, all about just looking good, being at peak top condition. Well, his tutelary is a peacock. And it reflects exactly like him. It's got a personality a lot like Harthur Matt's, full of confidence, walks with stride. This is exactly like Harthur Matt. That's what these tutelaries are supposed to be. They're supposed to be just entities that can help you with your daily task. Like if you want to cast a spell and you don't have enough juice for it, the tutelary can give you a little bit of juice. But they essentially act the way your personality is. Now, the only issue with tutelaries is that during the burning of Prospero, this is jumping ahead, but during the burning of Prospero, a lot of the tutelaries turned into gnarly things that would attack people and actually kill them, both Thousand Suns and Space Wolves. Now, you may think, well, isn't that a demon there? No, actually not. So, again, this is all the theory, but a tutelary reflects the owner. So, in other words, if you're a shy gamer, then your tutelary might come out as a ball of energy or as a cat who is shy to come out and talk to people. So you'd still have a tutelary, but he probably hides. So people are like, are you sure you have a tutelary? Yeah, I got a tutelary. He's just shy, like me. And that's what the tutelary will be like. Well, during the burning of Prospero, it was such a taken back situation for the Thousand Suns. They were so caught up in pain, malice, betrayal, that their tutelaries reflected that. They became snarly creatures just in pain, trying to take out their pain on anything around them. This would explain that. They're not demons, they are just enacting themselves based on a reflection of your current personality and soul. The other theory, is that tutelaries are actually demons. And we do have a few instances of this, where some tutelaries were actual demons. Some, not all. Some of the tutelaries we never see again. So it does kind of give credit to the idea that these tutelaries are a reflection of your soul, but on the flip side, some of these tutelaries are still around, so maybe they were demons. Now, why would there be demons on Prospero, and why would these people summon these demons willy-nilly? Like, everyone had one. It's almost like as if owning a dog or a pet. Everyone had a tutelary on Prospero. Well, the theory behind it is that Tzeentch, the master planner that he is, figured that when the burning of Prospero happened, the Space Wolves would kind of need a reason to continue their fighting, and so would the Thousand Suns. So he'll send his demons there to pretend like they're your friend and companion, and because the Thousand Suns didn't think about, these entities have their own minds, they're actually dangerous, they wouldn't think to shield their thoughts, so that way it's easier for the demon to look into your mind, see what your personality is like, and then just reflect it, and that would be it. You would never suspect it. You would never question this dog that's really friendly and kind, just like you are. You wouldn't think about it until the burning of Prospero, when it turns into a nasty, snarling pig/spider thing that would just devour your fucking insides and then continue to devour others. Again, these are just theories, but I think it's really interesting that Magnus the Red grew his world with psychic powers, because psychic powers was the reason why this world was not succeeding. But he actually did it. Through sheer psychic knowledge and prowess, he was able to grow the world, and then the world became so open with psychers that you'd have it where people display psychic prowess every single day. They'd be walking their tutelaries, they would be taking their job and using their psychic prowess to help them with their job. This is stuff that, again, I just find fascinating. I just had to put here for Magnus the Red. because this helps you get an idea as to the daily life of Magnus when he was growing his empire. So, besides that, that's been Freezer 700. I hope you guys enjoy. This has been a bit of a long one, but I think it's interesting because I like Magnus a lot. So, comment down below what you guys think. Which theory do you think is more correct? Do you think Tutelaries are Chaos Demons? Or do you think Tutelaries are actually just that? Tutelaries are not actually malicious. They just reflect the owner's soul. Besides that, see you guys next time. Next lore video will be an orc video, so stay tuned for that.